The stars were hidden behind a vast, dark cloud of smoke and debris. In the void of space, the silence was broken only by the hum of the fleet's engines as Captain Elias Kane watched the battle unfold on his holographic display. His heart pounded against his chest as the enemy flagship, a monstrous ship of gleaming silver and alien sigils, moved into position above the last bastion of humanity's defense. The humans had been preparing for this moment for years, and now, everything was falling apart. "Sir, we've lost contact with the comms team," Lieutenant Rhea Vallen's voice sliced through the tension. Her voice, always calm under pressure, held a slight edge of urgency. "They're jamming our signals. We can't reach the Second Fleet." Kane slammed his fist onto the command console, a surge of rage tightening his chest. "Get me through to the fleet, now!" His eyes never left the blinking red indicator on the screen, a signal from the alien vessel. The countdown had begun. Kane's hands shook as he studied the enemy's movements. He knew this battle would be their last. They had all assumed they would be fighting the same enemy they had faced for years, the Sorcial, a brutal alien race that had once been their allies. They had stood side by side in the war against the true threat, the Kethrax Empire, a galactic power that sought to consume everything in its path. But that was before the Sorcial decided humanity had become expendable. The comms channel flickered to life, and Kane's blood froze in his veins. A familiar voice, one he had once trusted, crackled through the speaker. "Captain Kane, I had hoped we wouldn't meet again under such unfortunate circumstances." It was General Vess. Kane's grip tightened on the console, his pulse quickening. Vess, his former comrade, his once closest ally in the intergalactic war. How had it come to this? "Vess," Kane muttered under his breath, barely keeping the tremor out of his voice. "You, traitor. I gave you a chance, Elias. You should have understood. The Sorcial cannot afford to let humanity grow stronger. Our position is tenuous at best. You were useful, but your time has come." The words were cold, devoid of any trace of the man Kane once called a friend. The realization hit Kane like a punch to the gut. This was a massacre waiting to happen. "We can still talk about this." Kane's voice was quieter now, though his mind was racing. "You don't have to do this, Vess. We can." "No, Elias," Vess interrupted, the metallic tone of his voice sharpening. "You don't understand. The Kethrax are coming. We have to act now, before they crush us both. I'm doing what must be done. Humanity had its chance." The transmission cut off abruptly. The words echoed in Kane's mind. Humanity had its chance. What did that even mean? The Sorcial, for all their brutal methods, had always been pragmatic. To discard an entire race, a species that had fought alongside them, was unfathomable. What had Vess seen to lead him down this path? Rhea appeared beside Kane, her expression grave. "Captain, we can't wait. They're already deploying the first wave. We need to launch our counterattack now, or it'll be over before we even get started." Kane's eyes flicked to the tactical display, now flashing with urgent red alerts. He swallowed hard, then spoke with deadly calm. "Prepare the fleet. We fight to survive." He paused, glaring at the distant silhouette of the Sorcial warship. No one betrays humanity and lives to tell the tale. The bridge fell silent as Rhea moved to execute the orders. The tension hung heavy in the air, like a storm about to break. "Captain," Rhea spoke again, her voice steady but concerned, "we can't hold off a full-scale assault. The fleet's numbers are too small, and their weapon systems are far superior." "What's the plan?" Kane closed his eyes for a moment, allowing himself a brief moment of reflection. He had led his people through hell, had fought countless battles alongside the Sorcial, trusted them when no one else would. And now it was all crashing down. His chest tightened with the weight of his decision. "We strike at their heart," he finally said. "We take down Vess's command ship. If we can eliminate him, we'll cut the head off this betrayal. The Sorcial will be thrown into chaos. Humanity will stand a chance." His voice hardened. And if I have to destroy every last one of them to avenge this betrayal, I will. Rhea gave a single nod, her face showing the grim determination that Kane had always admired in her. Understood, sir. Preparing the strike force now. As Rhea turned away to give orders, Kane's thoughts remained fixed on the enemy flagship. He was a soldier, but now, he was also a man betrayed. He had lost so much to this war, his home, his family, his faith in the idea of unity. But this was different. The lines were clearer now. The time for diplomacy was over. It was time for revenge. The countdown on his display reached 0. The war for humanity's survival had begun. Kane's heart still pounded as he stood on the bridge, the hum of the ship's engines vibrating through his boots, grounding him in the chaos. The battle was underway, but the sheer scope of the betrayal gnawed at him. His mind flashed back to moments with Vess, those early days, when they had fought side by side, trusting one another as soldiers do. Now, those memories felt like a lifetime ago, fading into a haze of lost ideals. Captain, Lieutenant Rhea Vallen's voice sliced through the tension like a blade. Her calm demeanor was a steadying presence, but even she couldn't mask the urgency in her words. The enemy flagship has activated its defensive shields. Our weapons aren't penetrating. Kane's jaw tightened. Then we'll make them bleed. Focus fire on their engines, keep them off balance. We'll need to get close enough to disable their command systems. Understood, Rhea responded. She moved with precision, barking orders to the crew as the tactical map on the display updated with enemy positions. Around them, the bridge was a flurry of activity, a chaotic dance of commands and responses. Every second counted now. Kane turned toward the viewport, where the distant silhouette of the alien warship glowed against the black void. His gaze hardened. They had been allies, once. Now, they were enemies. And those that had once fought for the survival of the galaxy had now turned on the very people who had trusted them. We'll strike fast, Kane muttered, more to himself than anyone else. No hesitation. We either take them down now or we lose everything. Sir, Rhea called from her station, our fighter squadrons are ready. We can launch a coordinated attack while we keep them distracted. But we'll need to make a clear opening. A flash of pain crossed Kane's face. His mind flickered to the younger faces of the pilots, men and women who had signed up believing they were defending humanity's future. They were about to face an overwhelming force, a betrayal they couldn't have prepared for. And many would not return. Get them out there, Rhea. And when they return, we'll make sure they have a victory to come home to. Rhea nodded, her eyes locking with his for just a moment, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Kane wasn't just leading soldiers anymore. He was leading a broken people, a species betrayed by the very ones they had trusted to guide them through the stars. Outside the viewport, the fighters launched. They darted in tight formations, slicing through the void like arrows aimed at an unyielding target. Kane watched them disappear into the depths of space, knowing full well the odds against them. Captain, Rhea's voice cut through his thoughts. The enemy's tactical response is accelerating. We've lost 2 ships already. We can't keep this up for long. Kane clenched his fists, every instinct screaming at him to act, to do something. But every move he made now would be a gamble. He knew the stakes. The Sorcial fleet was far superior in technology and numbers, and their new weapon systems were nearly unstoppable. Humanity's only advantage was their resilience. Divert power to shields, Kane ordered, forcing the comm to return to his voice. We can't afford to take another direct hit. The ship shuddered violently as another barrage of alien fire struck their hull. The lights flickered, but the crew barely flinched, years of war had taught them to expect it. A steady beep from Rhea's console broke the silence. Captain, incoming transmission. It's encrypted, but I think it's coming from one of our ships. Kane's pulse quickened. Patch it through. The familiar face of Commander Davis appeared on the holographic display, his features drawn and battered. He had led one of the human fleets during the war against the Kethrax, and Kane had come to trust him like a brother. Kane, we've been hit hard. We've got survivors, but we're in no shape to fight. You need to. Davis's voice cut off, replaced by static. The transmission flickered, then restored. Hold the line. If you can, we have intel. They've got a new weapon. Something that could turn the tide. But we need you to make it to the outpost. You have to. The message ended abruptly, leaving Kane staring at the empty space where Davis's face had been. That weapon, Kane muttered, turning to Rhea. It's our only shot. We need to get to that outpost. Now. Rhea's expression hardened. Understood. I'll prep the fleet for a course change. Kane's mind raced. The outpost was deep within enemy territory, surrounded by the very forces they had been battling. But the intel from Davis could be their salvation, or their doom. He didn't have time to doubt. Every moment of hesitation could cost them everything. Set course for the outpost. Full speed ahead, Kane commanded. Prepare the remaining forces for a strategic retreat if needed. We're going to need everything we've got. Rhea's voice was steady, but he could see the weight of her decision in her eyes. Aye, Captain. Kane turned back to the viewport, his hands clenched on the railing, his mind replaying every moment of the war, the betrayals, the losses, the sacrifices. The crew trusted him to lead them out of this, but as the stars sped by in a blur, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were heading straight into the heart of hell. He was about to make a decision that could either turn the tide of the war or destroy everything they had fought for. And there was no turning back now. The distant outpost loomed on the tactical map, a speck on the horizon, nestled within the black sea of hostile space. It was humanity's last hope, the only place that could hold the secret to defeating the Sorcial. Yet, as Captain Elias Kane gazed at it, the knot in his stomach tightened. He couldn't afford to hesitate now, not with the Sorcial fleet closing in on their position. Captain, we've got incoming. Rhea Valen's voice cut through his thoughts, steady as ever. Sorcial warships. They've flanked us. We're in their kill zone. Kane's pulse quickened, but his voice remained level. How many? At least 5. We're outnumbered and outgunned, she said, her fingers flying over her console. But we've got a small window. If we move now, we might just slip through. The outpost was still several minutes away at maximum speed. And the Sorcial were no longer playing games. They were out for blood. Kane's eyes flicked to the crew, their faces etched with the same grim determination that had carried them through this hellish war. He knew what they were thinking. The odds were slim, but humanity had never been one to give up. Not without a fight. Rhea, plot a course. Get us as close to that outpost as you can. Full speed ahead, no matter the cost, Kane ordered, his voice a low rumble. She nodded and immediately began inputting coordinates. Aye, Captain. But we'll be risking everything, you know that? I know, Kane replied, his gaze fixed on the viewport as the stars stretched into lines of light. His mind raced, memories of past battles flashing before him, lost friends, impossible odds, and the unyielding drive of human resilience. Humanity had faced extinction before, and they had come through it every time. This would be no different. The ship shuddered violently as the first wave of enemy fire slammed into their shields. Red lights flashed, and the air vibrated with the sharp hum of energy weapons. Kane gritted his teeth, willing himself to stay calm. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, every action precise, no wasted motion. We're holding, Rhea called over her shoulder. Shields at 70%. But they won't hold much longer. Kane turned to her, his voice hard. I don't need you to hold them. I need you to get us out of here. Now. Rhea's expression softened for a moment, just a flicker of something human in the storm of calculated chaos. Understood. She worked her console with fierce determination, pulling the ship into evasive maneuvers. The space around them erupted into a deadly ballet of energy blasts and evasions. Outside the viewport, Sorcial warships seemed to materialize out of nowhere, each one more imposing than the last, their hulls glinting in the dim starlight. Kane's stomach twisted with each jolt. He could feel the strain in the ship's frame as it twisted and turned, narrowly avoiding incoming fire. But each second they brought them closer to the outpost, and to the last, fragile hope of survival. 5 minutes until we hit the perimeter, Rhea said, her voice taut with focus. If they lock onto us now, it's over. Kane's mind sharpened, and a cold calculation filled the space where anxiety had been. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about reclaiming their future. Every moment of this battle, every life lost, had led to this point. He would not let it slip away. Ready the fighters, Kane said, turning back to Rhea. Prepare them for a direct assault. We'll need every hand we can get once we're in range. Rhea didn't hesitate. Fighter squads 1 through 4 are standing by, sir. A loud crack shook the ship as another volley of fire slammed against their shields. Sparks flew from consoles, but the crew barely flinched. Kane could see the strain in their eyes, but also the fire. They would not surrender. We're almost there, Rhea said, eyes fixed on the rapidly approaching outpost. Just hold on, Captain. Outside, the Sorcial were closing in, their warships angling to box them in. Kane could almost feel their hatred, the relentless pursuit of annihilation. And yet, as desperate as it seemed, there was something else he could feel in his bones. The inevitable. The moment when humanity would strike back. This was their moment. Brace for impact, Kane ordered, just as the ship shuddered again. The shields dropped to 50%. It wouldn't be long now. Suddenly, a voice broke through the chaos. Captain, this is Davis. We've reached the outpost's perimeter. The weapon, it's ready. We can launch as soon as you give the word. Kane's heart raced. This was the moment. The weapon that could turn the tide. Davis had confirmed it. They had to get to the outpost, now. Rhea, bring us in. As fast as you can. Aye, sir. The ship bucked under another barrage of enemy fire, but they were close now, close enough to see the outpost's angular structure taking shape in the distance, a flickering beacon of hope amidst the void. But even as they neared it, a new danger emerged. A Sorcial dreadnought, larger than anything Kane had seen, emerged from behind the moon of a nearby planet. Its guns were already trained on them. Damn it. Rhea hissed as her hands danced across the controls. They're going to cut us off. Kane's voice was cold with resolve. We don't give up. Not now. Not ever. The countdown had begun. The outpost was just within reach. Kane's gaze sharpened on the dreadnought, his mind already calculating the attack. They weren't just going to escape, they were going to win. The moment the Sorcial dreadnought's guns powered up, Kane's entire body went cold. He didn't need to see the weapon's monstrous barrel to know that this was it, their final test. They had pushed through every obstacle, every betrayal, but now, with the outpost just within reach and humanity's last hope in their hands, it felt as though the universe was about to crush them in its cold, uncaring grip. Captain, Rhea Valen's voice was taut, the raw edge of panic creeping through despite her steely professionalism. We can't outrun that thing. They're about to open fire. Kane's fingers dug into the armrests of his command chair. He could almost hear the hum of the ship's engines struggling to push them faster. The gap between them and the outpost had closed to just under a minute, but the dreadnought was already locking onto them with its advanced targeting systems. Everyone brace for impact, Kane ordered, his voice calm, a cold contrast to the tension in the air. Rhea, get us inside that outpost's perimeter. If we can just buy enough time, we'll be able to fire the weapon. That's our only chance. I know, she muttered under her breath, but there was something in her eyes, something that burned like fire, that told him she wouldn't quit. Not now. Not ever. The dreadnought fired. The first blast struck their shields with a deafening crack, and the entire ship lurched as if it had been punched in the gut. Sparks flew from the consoles, and the entire crew braced, gritting their teeth against the shock. The lights flickered, but no one cried out. No one faltered. Shields holding at 30%. Rhea shouted over the chaos, her hands moving faster than humanly possible, inputting evasive maneuvers. But they'll go down before we reach the outpost. Then we'll make them pay, Kane growled. His jaw clenched, every muscle in his body coiled with determination. This is humanity's last stand. We will survive. He turned to his crew, meeting each gaze, his eyes dark with the weight of everything they'd fought for. They weren't just soldiers anymore. They were the embodiment of every human who had ever stood against tyranny, against invaders. This battle wasn't about tactics or strategy anymore. It was about defiance. And they were going to show the Sorcial just how far that defiance would go. The ship trembled again as another barrage pounded the shields. Their protective barrier was almost gone, and Kane knew the next shot could very well tear through the hull. Activate the backup generators, Kane ordered, his mind already calculating their odds. Divert all power to the engines. We need speed more than anything right now. Rhea didn't argue. She pulled levers, slammed buttons, and the ship surged forward, its hull groaning under the strain of overloaded systems. The dreadnought fired again, but this time, their evasive maneuver threw off its aim. The blast missed by inches. Not good enough, Kane muttered. Keep pushing. Suddenly, a voice crackled over the comms, ragged and filled with urgency. Captain, this is Davis. The weapon is ready. But we're gonna need a clean shot at that dreadnought to launch it. Can you keep them off us long enough? Kane's heart thundered in his chest. They were right there. But so was the Sorcial fleet. Hold on, Davis, he snapped, glaring at the view screen. Rhea, get us to that dreadnought's blind spot. If we can make it there, we can disable their main guns long enough for Davis to fire. We don't have the time, she replied, but her voice was steely with resolve. They'll be on us in less than 30 seconds. Kane's mind raced. They were running out of options. You have 30 seconds. Get us there. Rhea gritted her teeth and swung the ship hard, using the gravitational pull of a nearby asteroid to sling them in an unexpected arc. The ship groaned under the strain, but it worked just enough to throw off the dreadnought's aim. Come on, come on. Kane muttered under his breath, watching as the massive enemy ship filled the viewport. They were so close now, he could almost taste it. One shot, and they could win. Captain, Rhea's voice broke through his thoughts, we've got a problem. The Sorcial are deploying boarding pods. Kane's blood ran cold. They were going to board the ship. They had no choice but to destroy the dreadnought quickly. If they didn't, the crew would be massacred. Focus on their weapons. We don't have time to waste. The ship bucked again, the shields now barely holding. The Sorcial weren't pulling punches, but neither was Kane. They were going to take this fight to them. Target their primary gun array, full power. Hit them with everything we've got. Kane barked. The ship's main cannons fired, sending devastating pulses of energy toward the Sorcial dreadnought. One shot, two, three, each one pierced through the shields of the larger ship, leaving an ever-growing gap in their defenses. The blast rang out, and for a moment, everything seemed to pause. And then, the explosion. The dreadnought buckled, its massive frame torn apart by a final, overwhelming burst. Kane saw it in his mind's eye, the explosion rocking the Sorcial ship, the light blooming into an all-consuming fireball. Did we get it? Rhea asked breathlessly, her hands still on the controls, but her eyes full of tension. There was no answer for a moment. Kane's chest tightened as he awaited confirmation. And then, the comms came to life once more. Davis, Captain. The weapon, it's activated. The Sorcial fleet is retreating. The crew erupted in a cheer, relief and disbelief mixing in their voices. They had done it. But Kane's mind was still on the battlefield. The war was far from over. Prepare for the next phase, Kane said, his voice steady but filled with quiet fire. This was just the beginning.